What tools do you use? That's one of the most common questions that I get. In fact, that question I've been asked more times than about my hair. Hey, welcome. Saturday night, right? Saturday night. So, what have you been up to? What have you been up to? Well, for me, I have been busy at work. One of the things that I was doing today was to put together something that I've always wanted to put together, but just didn't have the time or the energy to do it. And today, finally, I get the time and the energy to do it. What I'm talking about is that for the longest time, people has been asking me about what kind of tools do I use. For example, when I was making videos, people like to ask me like, what camera do you use, right? When I was teaching people about podcasting, people were asking me, what kind of microphone do I use? And of course now with live stream, people are asking me, what kind of software do I use? And the truth of the matter is this, right? It is not about the tools that you use, right? It is not about the tools because you know you can get the best tools, right? I mean, if you're not convinced, let me say this: you can get the best tools. You can go out there and get a RAID camera, an 8K RAID camera, or you can go out there and buy the Mac Pro, right, complete with the super expensive Mac display and the wheels and all that stuff, right? You can go there and get the best microphone there is, right? All the studio mic and all that stuff. But what's important, it's the way that you deploy and you employ these tools. It's not about the tools that you have. And hence, in from an economic point of view, we believe that with resources, it's not about the equal distribution of resources, right? I mean, for the longest time, people have been talking about this concept of equality, right? Really, I do not believe about this concept of equality. Yes, I believe that everyone should have equal rights, equal opportunity, but equality, nah, not so much, right? And so the key idea here is that the same resources given to two different people with two very different capability, mindset, skill set, the outcome would look very, very different. Okay, so if you give it to someone who is better able to manage and to deploy those resources versus if you give it to someone else who is less able to deploy those resources, arguably at the macro level, right, it pays well to allocate the resources to people who are more capable, because we then believe that the people who are more capable, they would go about in terms of employing people who are less able or less willing. And so as a result of that, you get a better well-being for everybody. So the saying where rising tide lift all boats. Of course, then when it comes to distribution of wealth, of course, that's not going to be the case. But that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is the idea about having the tools. It's not the end game, right? Having the tools is not the end game. So today, I took a fair bit of time to actually talk about, you know, this whole idea of um, what what exactly it's my workflow like, you know. And so I have, kind of put it here for you. So if you want to, you can check it out because what I really believe in is that it is about the mindset, the skill set, then the tool set. Because quite often, you know, we cannot default to the tools first. When we think about something that we want to achieve, you know, invariably, we usually default to the tools first. Do I have the necessary tools? But actually, what's more important is the mindset, as we have talked about many times here on this show. What's more important is the mindset and, of course, the skill set, right? And the way that is being deployed. And the way that is being deployed, it's what we call the workflow. And so the workflow, it's basically, you know, if you think about it, is input, throughput, output. So the input, it's basically, you know, the tools and the resources that you have. Now, the workflow, which is actually the crucial ingredient in this entire process itself, is the throughput. And of course, with the most optimal throughput, you get the best output. All right. So if you have the same piece of resources, the same pieces of input, but the throughput, it's less superior or inferior in some sense, then of course the output is going to be less superior. All right. And so I took the entire afternoon as well as evening to put together a document which, you know, document my entire thinking about workflow. And it goes back into, you know, my beliefs, my philosophy, my identity of who I am. And because of that, you know, with that comes a set of values. And so how I am going to be, if you like, allocating resources and time to it. So if you see from this slide here, which I'm going to show you, what you see here is actually the page that I've just created tonight, right? It's freshly minted. And so, you know, I chose this code here because I think it's really apt. Is that it's not the tools we use that make us good, but rather how we deploy them, right? And so, you know, I'm someone who is obsessed about productivity. Why am I obsessed with productivity? For various reasons. Number one is that, you know, I want to make the best use of my time because right now I've got two really young children, and I hate it when I have to turn them away and tell them that, no, you know, I can't play with you. Okay, I can't talk to you because I need to get this done, right? I want to be able to give them as much attention as possible, especially during this period, especially during this time as they're, you know, still growing up. And so I want to be able to make the best use of my time. The other aspect of it is that I see myself as an investor because I'm taking my own money to invest in myself for my business. And so if I'm not being, you know, stringent about my time and my resources, then I'm just going to make, you know, I'm just going to make a bad investor and definitely a bad entrepreneur. And so, you know, with that two thing in mind, what I really like to do is, you know, I want to be able to make the best use of my time. It doesn't mean that I have to be working like 18 hours a day, but the point is that, you know, when I choose to sit my butt down on the chair, I want to be able to make sure that the output that I put out, it's of good quality. Right. And so that's why I'm obsessed about productivity, and I'm constantly experimenting with different workflows and tools to help me save time. Right. And ironically, this experimentation is time consuming because I can't tell you the number of times whereby I had to switch from one app to another, or I have to rethink my entire workflow, and hence because of that, the transition from one workflow to another resulted in some level of downtime. And so the key idea here is that you kind of go slow so you can go faster, because once you find an optimal workflow, that will give you tremendous result, right? And so I'm sharing this because like I said, it's time consuming, and I do not want you to be wasting your time doing that. And so I'm sharing this with you so that if you feel that this is great, then adopt it by all means. If it's not, then just leave, right? So there are two parts that I have kind of put it down, because these two parts are the ones that people ask me the most. Number one is, how do I pursue my digital ambition, right? So in a nutshell, it's about how I'm able to get my business in the online space, and to be able to leverage technology, and to be able to do that in the best way possible. And so I start off with, I go through the entire workflow itself, because originally when I was gonna do up this page, I was thinking about writing about it from a point of view of, these are the tools that I use, right? But the problem with pages like that is that you can find dime a dozen of it, but the tools without the context is just not meaningful. And so what I would like to do is to give you context, at the same time to be able to give you a sense of why am I using these tools, and the process of me doing that, right? So whatever digital project that I pursue, and knock on wood, every time I put out something, I've able to validate that, I'm able to justify that whatever research that I've done has been correct. And so, it all comes down to this. Every time, I have an idea, and whether that idea can turn into a project, or the idea get killed, even before it sees the light of day, it depends on just one thing. And the one thing is whether, what problem does it solve? Because at the end of the day, people are not going to pay attention to you. People are not going to subscribe to you. I mean, you're not someone, or at least not in my opinion, you're not someone who is able to create the demand. You're not Apple, right? So I do not believe that we are able to create the demand. What we should be able to do is to be able to identify problems that either are not well solved, or can be solved in a more elegant way. That's what we want to do, right? So with that itself, I want to find out, is there a problem that is solved? And so this is my process of going through. I mean, I start by brainstorming a list of keywords. I use Google Keyword Planner as my main tool, but of course, there are other tools out there that are paid, and Google Keyword Planner, it's free, and so that's where I default to. Now, once I have an idea that there is sufficient demand, that means there are actually people searching for a solution to that problem itself. Then the next thing I do is I would want to make out a list of questions that people are asking, right? So, for example, at one point in time, I was looking at video marketing as a solution. And so I look at, are there people looking for this solution to a problem? Because the problem is that the current way of doing marketing is not working. And so they're looking at new and more refreshing way. And one of that, it's leveraging video. And so once I found that there was a sufficient demand for video marketing, the next thing I do is, I need to know what are the questions that people are asking. I cannot assume that I know what questions people are asking. And so I go to places like Quora and Twitter to find out, what are the questions that people are asking. And then because I got a following on LinkedIn as well, what I usually do is I will reach out to my connections and I will ask them about their experience with the problem. right? I do not ask them about the solution. I ask them about their experience with the problem. And the reason I do that is because, it's not about asking questions, but it's asking the right questions. And there are these two books that I go to. I refer to them a lot because they are the ones that help me sharpen my questioning technique and sharpen my questions as well. So the next part is really to consolidate them into a spreadsheet or some kind of database. For me, I use Airtable. And so that kind of gives me the ability to create a database of all the answers, and I'm able to do all this, wonderful computation and analysis with that. And then, once I have all those answers, all those questions that people are asking, I need to create content to address those questions. And this is where, I go into Facebook audience insights, because this is where I kind of want to know what my potential customers, what are their likes, what are their dislikes, and what kind of behavior do they engage in, right? What kind of things do they buy, and what kind of things do they gravitate to? So for example, if I am talking to a 40-year-old guy, I know exactly what to say to him. I know what kind of examples to use. I know what kind of song lyrics to quote, that would immediately, bring a smile to both of our faces. But if I am communicating with someone who is in her early 30s, who is a female, I don't necessarily have a clue in terms of what are their likes and what are their behavior. And so this is where I kind of default to using Facebook Audience Insight to give me an idea of what is it that I can look out for, right? And so once I have that, I get a better idea of what kind of content am I going to create. So once I do that, the next part, it's really to build what I call a MVW, right? A MVW, it's basically a minimum viable website. And the key idea with that is that, you do not need a full-fledged, 20-page website at this point in time. All you need is a minimum viable website that you are able to put out some content to be able to attract the right audience, and then get them to respond to the content itself by offering them something, right? Something that is useful. And then from there, you are able to collect their email addresses, and to be able to build up a list of potential customers that you could sell your product to, right? And so this whole idea with that is that these are all the parts. I'm not going to go through here, but you can go and read it on your own itself. But these are like the bare bones that you would need to create a minimum viable website. And once that is done, you can start sharing content on social media. But the main idea is to drive traffic to your minimum viable website, right? So it can be done organically, which is going to take you a long time, or you could use ads to kind of find out if that's something that people are going to pick up. So I can share with you, recently I ran an ad for 5 days. I spent an inexpensive amount of money, and I get about 200% return on that, right? So it's about the technique. It's about the way that you deploy it. It's not necessarily, you do not necessarily need to have like, a lot of content out there. So it has to be strategic. Okay. So once you have that, right, the next thing is to build that minimum viable product itself. So, if you do not understand what is a minimum viable product, basically it just says that, you come up with a product with the minimum number of features that is able to satisfy the early adopters. So people who are most keen in embracing your solution, find out what is the bare minimum that you can provide to them. Now, take note, bare minimum doesn't mean that you come up with something crappy. It just means that you create something that is able to help people, overcome some of the problems. And in my world, my version of the MVP is what I call the catalytic course, because the whole idea is this, that you get people to know, like, and trust you. But going from trust to buy it's a big leap, right? I trust you doesn't mean I would necessarily buy, because there's so many other concerns that I still may have. But it may not be anything to do with you. I may trust you, but it could be, I have uncertainty at this point in time, or in terms of my budget. So there are many things, right? There are many things at play that they just are not able to go from trust to buy. So what we want to do is we want to bridge this step, and the way to bridge this step is to think of a way to get them to be able to give them a way to try you out. Because once they try you out, and it it nullifies all their idea about the risks and all that, that's when they are going to go from try to buy. All right. And so the way I do this is that I use what I call a catalytic cost. So the catalytic cost is basically to identify what is the decision inertia for the people. And once I'm able to identify the decision inertia, I then create a catalytic course, a short course to empower them so that they are able to take action at a very, very low cost. And the key thing is to help them get results, right? Because once they get results, that's something that hooks them. That's something that makes them want more. They now believe that it is possible. And now they believe that, it is more than what they used to think it is. And so, once you're able to get them the results, the next thing really is to, build a minimum viable audience using videos. That's how I do it, because, that's my passion for that. Right. And so, this is my workflow in terms of creating videos. And after I create the videos, what do I do with that? I then repurpose the videos into other formats and also into products, right? And so this is where, I kind of use this whole workflow itself. And I share with you, what are the tools that I use, what are the apps that I use, and essentially how I do it as well, right? So this pretty much, I wouldn't go into the daily routine. If you're interested, you can check it out itself, right? So the URL you should go to, it's there in the comments, mel.2/workflow. Check that out, and see if that's something that you could you find useful. Oh, and one more thing is that I've just added this thing here, and so if you like what you see, and if you feel that whatever that I've been providing have been useful, you can go there and you could do this little thing by buying me a coffee virtually, right? So buy me a coffee virtually. That's something that you can do, and I would greatly appreciate that. All right. So with that itself, that kind of concludes our show here today. And if you got questions for me, I'll be more than glad to answer them. And if you like, please check out the workflow and see if that's something that you can benefit from. That page is going to be continually updated. I'm going to update it as and when I come across something new, or I have a change in my workflow, which can be quite frequent. So that's a place that you want to go to and check it out, right? And with that, I thank you so much for watching, and you've been great. I know Mom is watching. Hi, Mom. I love you, Mom. Right. And so with that, thank you so much. Stay safe, and I'll talk to you on the next one. Bye-bye.